Pirates actually slept better than most people today, despite being covered in rats and lice every single night. But here's what historians never tell you about their secret sleeping method that kept them alive when disease should have killed them within weeks. When most people think about getting a good night's sleep, they picture soft mattresses and fluffy pillows. Pirates? Well, they had hammocks swinging over rat droppings and questionable stains that nobody wanted to identify. But here's the thing. Those hammocks weren't just some romantic nautical tradition, they were actually genius survival tools. Think about it like choosing between sleeping on a subway platform or hanging in a tree. The hammocks kept pirates suspended above the deck filth, which was crawling with more creatures than a nature documentary. Rats couldn't exactly climb up and tuck themselves in for a cozy snuggle when you're swaying 3 feet off the ground. The swinging motion that would make most landlubbers seasick? Pirates learned to love it. Makes sense, right? Instead of being thrown around like a rag doll every time the ship hit rough waters, the hammock moved with the ship's rhythm. I've tried sleeping in a hammock in my backyard. Took me about 4 attempts before I stopped flipping out like a pancake. These guys mastered it out of pure necessity. But here's where it gets really clever. Compared to regular bedding, hammocks were like fortress walls against lice infestations. Those tiny, blood-sucking freeloaders preferred the cozy corners and fabric folds that regular beds provided. A hammock offered fewer hiding spots and was easier to shake out when things got too itchy for comfort. And the cockroaches? Well, even those determined little tanks had trouble making the vertical climb to reach a sleeping pirate. It's like putting your food on top of the refrigerator to keep it away from toddlers. Simple physics working in your favor. Pirates weren't the first to figure this out either. They borrowed the hammock idea from earlier sea voyagers who discovered that cramped ship quarters demanded creative sleeping solutions. Space was more precious than gold coins when you're sharing a vessel with 30 other unwashed men for months at a time. The brilliance of this setup was so obvious that naval ships eventually adopted hammocks too. Military efficiency experts realized what pirates knew all along. You could pack more sleeping sailors into less space, and they'd actually sleep better. Then, there's the question of how pirates managed to get any rest at all when someone always had to stay awake to watch for threats, both human and rodent. When you're trying to sleep on a pirate ship crawling with rats and disease, having someone watch your back becomes a matter of life and death. Pirates figured out early that the buddy system wasn't just for summer camp, it was survival. The nighttime watch system worked like a well-oiled machine. If that machine happened to smell like unwashed sailors and rotting fish, while half the crew caught some shut-eye, the other half stayed awake, armed with sticks, boots, and whatever else they could use to fend off the four-legged invaders. Think of it as the world's grittiest game of whack-a-mole. But here's where it gets interesting. These rotating shifts actually saved lives in ways pirates probably never realized. Fewer bodies sleeping at once meant less exposed skin for disease-carrying fleas and lice to feast on. It's like having a buffet with half the tables closed. The pests had fewer options, which gave everyone a fighting chance. Pirates typically paired up for these watches, and let me tell you, choosing the right watch partner was more important than picking a good roommate in college. You needed someone who wouldn't fall asleep on the job or run screaming when a rat the size of a small dog decided to investigate your hammock. The wrong partner could mean waking up with bite marks that weren't just from insects. Well, the social aspect wasn't just about pest control either. These shared nighttime duties built the kind of camaraderie that kept crews together through storms, battles, and the occasional mutiny attempt. Nothing bonds men quite like spending 4 hours in the dark, swatting at rats and complaining about the cook's latest culinary disaster. Some clever pirates used these quiet watch hours for a bit of housekeeping. And by housekeeping, I mean the kind that involved clearing out sleeping areas and checking hammocks for unwanted guests. The night shift became an opportunity to spot problems before they got out of hand. Then there's the psychological advantage. Knowing someone had your back while you slept made the difference between restful sleep and lying there all night, jumping at every scratch and scurry. Pirates were tough, but even the saltiest sea dog needed some peace of mind. But the real genius wasn't just in sharing the workload, it was in what pirates learned to do during their waking hours to make their sleeping quarters less appealing to unwanted visitors. Pirates might not have been known for their table manners, but when it came to staying alive, they got surprisingly creative with cleanliness. Well, creative by 18th century standards anyway. Seawater became their washing machine of choice. Makes sense, right? When you're surrounded by an endless supply of salt water, you use what you've got. Pirates would rinse their clothes regularly in the ocean, and that salt content actually worked wonders against lice. Those little bloodsuckers hated the stuff more than a tax collector hates April 15th. But here's where it gets interesting. Pirates developed what I like to call buddy delousing sessions. Picture grown men picking through each other's hair like a troop of very grumpy baboons. These sessions weren't just about hygiene, they built trust. Nothing says, "I've got your back," quite like literally having someone's back while hunting for parasites. Fresh water was rarer than a politician keeping promises, so pirates had to think outside the barrel. They learned tricks from every port they visited. Spanish sailors taught them about using vinegar rinses. Caribbean locals showed them which leaves could scrub skin clean without soap. Then there's the bird connection that most people never hear about. Smart pirates noticed how seabirds would peck at lice and fleas around the ship. Some crews actually encouraged small birds to perch nearby during rest periods. Free pest control with wings. My grandfather used to say the smartest solution is usually the simplest one, and those pirates proved it. The real game changer? Timing their cleaning routines. Pirates figured out that certain times of day meant fewer rats scurrying around their sleeping areas. Early morning cleanups, right after dawn, became standard practice. Rats preferred the cover of deeper darkness, so those precious daylight hours were perfect for a quick tidy-up. And let's not forget their clothing strategy. Smart pirates kept spare clothes when possible, rotating between clean and dirty sets. The dirty ones got the seawater treatment while they wore the cleaner ones. Simple system, but it worked better than you'd expect. These cleaning rituals might seem basic, but they were absolutely crucial for survival on long voyages. Every louse removed meant less disease risk. Every rat dropping cleaned up meant safer sleeping conditions. Of course, staying clean was just one piece of the puzzle. Even with their best hygiene efforts, those rats kept coming back, bold as brass and twice as destructive. Pirates weren't exactly running maritime pest control companies, but they sure knew how to handle unwanted critters. The most popular employee on any pirate ship? The ship's cat. These furry exterminators earned their keep by hunting rats that would otherwise feast on precious food supplies and spread deadly diseases. Tabby cats became the gold standard of pirate pest control. Why tabbies? Well, they had the hunting instincts of a Wall Street trader and the patience of a saint. Pirates treated these cats like royalty, and honestly, they deserved it. A good mouser could save an entire crew from starvation or plague. Makes sense, right? But cats weren't the only weapon in their arsenal. Pirates discovered that certain herbs worked like natural bug spray. Bay leaves scattered around sleeping areas kept insects at bay, while peppermint, when they could get their hands on it, sent rats running faster than a tax collector in a pirate port. Here's where things get interesting. Maritime superstition claimed that catching rats brought good luck, so pirates turned pest control into a twisted game of chance. They'd compete to see who could trap the most rats, believing each captured rodent improved their fortune. Talk about making the best of a bad situation. The real enemy wasn't just the rats themselves, it was what they carried. These disease-spreading menaces could transmit bubonic plague, typhus, and other nasties that could wipe out an entire crew. Pirates understood this connection long before scientists figured out germ theory. Experience taught them that fewer rats meant fewer dead pirates. Some crews got creative with their pest control methods. They'd use smoke from tobacco or burning herbs to flush out rats from hiding spots. Others discovered that keeping their sleeping areas elevated and clean made life harder for unwanted visitors. It's like playing defense in the world's worst game of hide and seek. The most successful pirate ships maintained what we call today an integrated pest management system. Cats handled the heavy lifting, herbs provided backup defense, and good old-fashioned cleanliness made the environment less attractive to pests. They even learned to seal food containers properly, something that would make any modern homeowner proud. Then there's the matter of what pirates ate to stay healthy enough to fight off the diseases these pests carried. Their diet choices weren't just about taste, they were about survival in ways most landlubbers never considered. Pirates had to get creative with their meals, especially when it came to staying healthy enough to fight off the nasty critters sharing their floating home. Think of it like trying to boost your immune system while shopping at the world's worst grocery store, one that's constantly rocking back and forth. citrus fruits became liquid gold on pirate ships. Not because they tasted good. Let's be honest, after weeks at sea, even moldy oranges probably tasted like candy. The real magic happened when sailors munched on limes and lemons, unknowingly preventing scurvy. Smart captains hoarded these vitamin bombs like modern folks stockpile toilet paper during a pandemic. But here's where things get interesting. Pirates absolutely loved their garlic. They chomped down on cloves like they were going to a vampire convention. While they thought it kept evil spirits away, garlic actually packed serious antifungal punch. Those pungent bulbs helped fight off infections that thrived in the ship's damp, disgusting conditions. The infamous pirate drink, grog, wasn't just about getting tipsy after a hard day of pillaging. This mix of rum and water served as a primitive water purification system. The alcohol killed bacteria that would otherwise turn a pirate's stomach inside out faster than you could say, walk the plank. Well, the limited food options meant pirates had to make do with whatever they could stuff into barrels. Dried beans, salted pork, and hardtack biscuits formed the backbone of their diet. These foods lasted forever, sometimes literally. Some hardtack was so tough it could probably stop a cannonball. Port visits became culinary adventures where pirates traded stories and exotic foods. A pineapple here, some strange spices there. Suddenly their monotonous meals got exciting. These foreign foods often contain nutrients their bodies desperately craved, even if they didn't understand the science behind it. The weird part is how pirates accidentally stumbled onto pretty decent nutritional strategies. Pickled vegetables lasted months and prevented various deficiency diseases. Fermented foods aided digestion when your typical meal consisted of mystery meat that had seen better decades. Makes sense, right? When you're living cheek by jowl with rats and dealing with lice parties in your hair every night, your body needs all the help it can get. But even the smartest dietary choices couldn't solve every health problem pirates faced in their cramped quarters. Then, there's the matter of what happened when regular food and folk wisdom wasn't enough to keep everyone healthy and pest-free. When your biggest medical concern is whether that green stuff growing on your leg will kill you before the rats do, you get creative with remedies. Pirates became accidental pharmacists out of sheer necessity, mixing whatever they could find into questionable but surprisingly effective treatments. Chamomile and lavender weren't just pretty flowers to these sea-hardened men. They stuffed these herbs into their hammocks like medieval aromatherapy enthusiasts. The calming scents helped them drift off despite the symphony of scratching, squeaking, and general nastiness happening around them. Think of it as the 17th century version of those expensive sleep sprays your neighbor swears by, except theirs actually worked. But here's where things get interesting. Vinegar became their miracle cure for lice. They doused their scalps with the stuff, creating a smell that could knock a seagull out of the sky. The acidic burn was brutal, but it sent those tiny parasites packing faster than you could say, "Ahoy, matey." Smart? Absolutely. Pleasant? About as enjoyable as a root canal performed by a parrot. Then, there were the self-proclaimed sea shamans. These were usually older pirates who'd survived enough voyages to accumulate bizarre medical knowledge from every port they'd visited. They'd brew concoctions that looked like witches' stew and probably tasted worse. Yet crews lined up for these remedies because, well, when you're desperate enough, even questionable medicine beats no medicine. Pirates also discovered that certain medicinal plants could survive the harsh sea environment. During their tropical pit stops, they'd scavenge for useful herbs like treasure hunters, except instead of gold, they were after anything that might keep their bodies functioning another few months. And let's not forget tobacco's unexpected benefit. Beyond the obvious recreational uses, pirates realized that tobacco smoke repelled insects better than any modern bug spray. They'd blow smoke around their sleeping areas, creating protective clouds that kept the worst pests at bay. Sure, it probably wasn't great for their lungs, but when you're choosing between lung damage and plague-carrying fleas, the choice becomes remarkably clear. The fascinating part? This hodgepodge of folk medicine actually worked reasonably well. These weren't trained doctors, just desperate men combining knowledge from African healers, Caribbean natives, and European herbalists into their own survival system. Of course, all the herbal remedies in the world couldn't solve their biggest challenge, maintaining any semblance of social order when everyone's crawling with parasites and running on 3 hours of sleep. When you're crammed into a floating wooden box with 30 other unwashed criminals, surviving isn't just about avoiding cannonballs. It's about managing the delicate social dance that kept everyone alive and relatively clean. Pirates weren't the anarchic free-for-alls Hollywood makes them out to be. They ran surprisingly tight ships with clear hierarchies that would make corporate middle management jealous. The captain called the shots, but below him sat a quartermaster who handled day-to-day operations, including who cleaned what and when. Makes sense, right? Someone had to decide whose turn it was to scrub the rat droppings. These weren't suggestions either. Crew members who slacked off on hygiene duties faced real consequences, anything from losing their share of loot to getting marooned on a deserted island. Nothing motivates proper pest control like the threat of being left alone with coconuts and regret. But here's where it gets interesting. Pirates also operated under surprisingly democratic principles. Major decisions got voted on, including health protocols when disease threatened the crew. I've seen modern offices with worse communication systems than these floating democracies of thieves. The buddy system saved lives too. Pirates paired up for watches, creating natural accountability partners who'd notice if their mate was showing signs of illness or letting personal hygiene slide. Your bunkmate wasn't just company, he was your early warning system against plague and your backup when the lice got unbearable. Living in such close quarters meant individual carelessness could kill everyone. Drop food scraps carelessly? Hello, rat highway to everyone's hammocks. Skip your delousing session? Congratulations. You've just gifted the entire crew with tiny blood-sucking passengers. Well, the smart crews developed what we now call peer pressure systems. Social bonds weren't just about friendship, they were survival mechanisms. When someone got sick, the group rallied with remedies and care. When someone got lazy about cleanliness, the group applied gentle pressure that wasn't always so gentle. These brotherhoods created something remarkable: collective responsibility for health and hygiene. Each pirate knew his well-being depended on everyone else maintaining basic standards. It's like having the world's most motivated roommates, except they all carried cutlasses. The weird part is how effective this social structure proved at managing disease and pests in impossible conditions. But even the strongest social bonds couldn't solve every problem these sailors faced. Mental toughness became just as crucial as physical cleanliness for surviving life at sea. When your bed is crawling with vermin and your ship reeks of rotting food, what keeps you sane? For pirates, the answer wasn't medicine or comfort, it was pure mental toughness. These seafaring outlaws developed psychological armor thicker than their ship's hull. They had to. Complaining about a few rats sharing your hammock wouldn't make them disappear. So pirates learned the art of acceptance faster than a preacher learns to pass the collection plate. Their secret weapon? Dark humor sharper than a cutlass. While most people today call customer service when their Wi-Fi goes down for 10 minutes, pirates would joke about the cockroaches in their soup. At least it's extra protein, they'd say, stirring the bowl like nothing happened. But here's the fascinating part. This wasn't just tough guy posturing. Pirates actually used storytelling as medicine. Every night, crew members would share tales of previous adventures, each story more outrageous than the last. These weren't just entertainment, they were psychological survival tools. The stories served a clever purpose. When you're hearing about Captain Blackbeard surviving 3 months with nothing but moldy bread and rainwater, suddenly your lice problem seems manageable. It's like therapy, except with more sword fighting and fewer diplomas on the wall. Pirates also mastered what psychologists today call reframing. Instead of seeing themselves as victims of terrible conditions, they viewed hardship as badges of honor. The more you could endure, the more respect you earned. Sleeping peacefully while rats ran across your chest? That wasn't gross. That was legendary. Training new crew members involved what we might call hardship orientation. Veterans would deliberately share the worst sleeping spots with newcomers, not out of cruelty, but to build resilience. Think of it as medieval team building, except nobody got trust falls or motivational posters. The most remarkable aspect was their group mentality. Individual suffering became shared strength. When one pirate struggled with the conditions, others would rally around with jokes, stories, or simple companionship. They understood that mental health was crew health. Well, this psychological toughness didn't just help them sleep better. It transformed ordinary men into legends who could face storms, battles, and Spanish warships without flinching. Their minds became their greatest weapon against both external enemies and internal despair. Pirates proved that sometimes the strongest medicine isn't what you put in your body, but what you put in your head. Mental resilience kept them alive when everything else failed.